I'm an architect, and that means that I carry responsibility for making the built environment, for offering change, for making shelters and sanctuaries that other people depend on. That kind of shelter and sanctuary today requires something much, much more than just an intervention or a transformation. It requires such an exquisite whole that perhaps the word holism needs to be treated with such sensitivity. What is a whole? When I think about that term, I think of perhaps this kind of whole, something with strong edges and a peaceful center inside. Perhaps that's what a piece of architecture really means. At least it's what I was told it was meant. And I take that very seriously, the idea that inside the walls and inside the shell, if I hold away the world, I will be safe, like a beautiful territory, perhaps with my friends or with my parents or with those that I trust. And I don't want to underestimate that sense of making something with clear boundaries and making something self. And yet I think it's perhaps the worst model that an architect can follow today, that kind of a whole always means that someone will be left out. I wonder whether I can have the confidence to somehow look at something which is so deeply fissured and open and gathering, rather than something that needs that kind of shell and boundary. I think this is a very difficult question, actually, because we live in such turbulence, such unspeakable insecurity, that the need for sanctuary, the need for shelter is very, very real. What is safety? I think that sometimes it's very possible to understand that we are gardens and mongrels and hybrids and radically multiple, rather than something that's clear. I started making very, very clear, very strong things, primal things. I wanted things to be solid and durable and responsible and definite. And when I was young, I was quite frightened about the stupidity that I saw in myself and the eccentricities and the uncertainties. I was very concerned to find a kind of a clarity as a contribution to the world. And yet, as I started to work with new materials and learned from some very, very generous other teachers and collaborators, I learned that the world of textiles, of multiple filaments, of small sheets of things, of trembling, of filamentary extensions, of the gentle kind of fragility of the forest all around me as I walk rather gently, is something that perhaps can become an actual medium of space and matter, rather than just the swampy void that needs to be cleared away in order to make a civilization. And I think that I've become much more confident in my own work, in what I can offer, about orchestrating a symphony of the milieu itself, that space is somehow ether, not a completely saturated, complex tumble of fields, but rather a granular, stuttering, deeply filamentary, kind of lovely, gentle, unapologetically fragile offering in which there are some voids and sanctuaries and places of peace. And that, then, that continually refreshing kind of set of cycles, I think defines what I can offer now as an architecture of quite a bit of hope. Hope about growth and possibility. When I think of some of the fundamental inspirations for architecture, I think of textiles as offering an extraordinarily valuable kind of model. When I think of what textiles fundamentally are, and I look at the evidence, say, of the James Webb telescope or the Hubble, and I look at all possible known transmissions in the universe, rather than empty space, the space that I was taught as a child, I was taught as an existentialist to be, that space was empty, that it was somehow proud to believe in that emptiness, that each of us was isolated and ultimately alone. But the evidence of this myriad of new data is that space is instead filamentary and continuously coupled with so many lines and flights and influences and the most kind of tissue-like, tension-filled web of interconnection, that it seems that rather than individual bounded spheres populating empty space, that a textile might be a fundamental kind of way of understanding what our world can be. And if we project and intuit and savor and listen very carefully, then that empty space becomes immeasurably full. In the turbulence of our world, the responsibility for making things sustainable is one that any thinking person carries, and that I carry as a commitment. What is it to be sustainable? One answer might be that in an unspeakably fragile world, we batten down the hatches and we reduce and we make us defined and radically durable and as circular as possible. And that might result in some very clear shells around things to reduce our mark. And yet, that act of reducing doesn't seem to go far enough. The possibility of sometimes doing nothing, sometimes offering dissolution, decay, a lovely release as a contribution, seems to be a very, very encouraging way to work. And I think that requires some new language. I think that it's not enough to simply say, I am responsible, you can rely on me. I think also a word like homeostasis, the kind of design and art which is that of a living system, might be a very, very helpful term to use. When I use that term, I use it as an amateur. What does homeostasis mean? Homeostasis means balance, but it's not the balance of a crystal which projects or which tries to capture or tries to declare a territory. Instead, it's a kind of a wholeness, I think, which is not so concerned with leaving a mark, but rather allowing things to flow through and resonate and stutter and oscillate and hiccup and go cold and go hot and go cold and go hot and get angry and laugh and get angry and laugh and share and sometimes go very, very still and very, very cold and sometimes get very, very heated. This curious, oscillating, stuttering space is, I think, something where artists and architects need some new language to be able to capture what vivid fertility can be. I hope I can offer some of those qualities to the meaning of sustainability. I ask myself, who am I? And what do I do? And I ask myself, how old am I? And what will I do? And very curiously, I find myself never knowing one single answer. I love making buildings. I love contributing art. I love thinking and writing. I love experimenting. I love working with other people and learning from them. And perhaps that's what a contemporary architect does somehow, is to draw together so many different disciplines and make something at once very, very deep and very, very precise and responsible, and yet somehow unapologetically shallow and broad and reaching so many different voices. This question of being shallow and deep at the same time is, I think, what I do.